We got Zach Carey here, managing editor of Streaking the Lawn, big rising star in the Virginia journalism scene. Thanks for jumping on this, buddy.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Zach, man. So a lot of people have been kind of stressed out over this Pittsburgh game. It was rough to watch. Uh, what did you see? Give me your couple of flash points from the 68-65 loss to Pitt.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last five or so UVA basketball games, maybe six if I'm Albany slipped through the cracks, but the last couple of games have been, I think, a little bit of a reset in expectations to some degree. The Pitt loss, I think, was just everything going wrong at one point in time. The first half was fine. I even tweeted out at halftime. I was like, listen, they're going to clean a couple of things up. This is a team that has been a second half team all season. They've been able to come out of halftime, make adjustments, and go on a run. And going into halftime up 10 against a Pitt team that can do some good things and have some things going for it, but looked outmatched in the first half, despite UVA's, giving up 5 offensive rebounds, having 5 live ball turnovers. It seemed like it was obvious that Virginia would pull that one away. And then just the defensive breakdowns were really bad. Tony Bennett weirdly struggled. He's been weirdly struggling with lineups this season, which I think has been it's definitely been talked about on Twitter and in other spaces. So this isn't a revolutionary idea, but it's been weird because he's usually good at that. And then the offense has just been stagnant, and they haven't been able to find consistent production from their best players, with or without Reese Beekman, sort of recently. So it's tough. It's tough to see where they go from here, how they improve, how they sort of get back to that early season flow. Even if those wins don't look as good now, they were still producing and sort of and just looking better than they do now. They seem to be in a bit of a funk.
Yeah, there's so many things I could say. First of all, you're right. Those wins that we had earlier in the season have all progressively gotten worse
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah, I mean,
Illinois, Baylor, and
right.
Michigan were
I mean,
all
Baylor
better when
just
we played
lost
them
to
than they are now.
TCU. Yeah, like there's a lot of things like Michigan's 8-5. Like teams are losing games, and even if they have Baylor has talent in the backcourt. They got Keontae George. They have guys there that can make a lot of plays. They could go on a run in March, but as sort of regular season juggernauts that we thought Illinois and Baylor especially could be, they haven't been. And that consistency for those teams hasn't been there. And so it's sort of a discussion of, man, so they came out of the gates, UVA came out of the gates really hot. Was that sort of a result of going to Italy and having, 4 games in the belt, getting extra practice time? Was that it? Is it just having that experience, having that cohesiveness and time together, and now other teams have caught up, and sort of that basic level, that sort of like that foundation is no longer as valuable? I don't think it's 100% that. I think that's definitely a contributing factor to some of that early season success. And then now I think there's also just a lot of things they could straight up do better. And so it's sort of a tough balance because, they shot the ball well against Pitt, but they can overall shoot the ball better. Their defense can be way more sound. The individual defenders have to be better. Guys can be better in the scheme. Offensively, better decision-making is just number one. And so there's a lot of little things that can be corrected to make this team a lot better, to be sort of the quality of team we thought we saw early in the year. The ceiling is still there. I'm not concerned about that as much as I am the game-to-game floor that's going to make this team could fall to a 6 seed, a 7 seed. That's possible. It's possible that they go 13-7 in a middling ACC, and those quality wins that we thought were going to be, definitely quad one might slip a little bit. They'll probably still be quad one. It's hard to know 100% now, but it's sort of like, man, they could slip a little bit, and then we're on the back foot going into the NCAA tournament. You don't get the result in the ACC you want, and then it's hard to evaluate how successful this season was. They could also go on a run. They could also win 11 of 12 ACC games. So that's possible.
That's the thing, right? So they're sitting somewhere like a 3-4 seed now for the tournament, I'd say. But, Virginia and Tony Bennett's teams generally have been, lately struggled a little bit in the beginning and then kind of figured things out the further ACC play goes on.
Yeah.
But this feels a little bit different, I would say, just because of the lineup thing that you're saying. And sometimes it seems like, thank God Kihei came back, because he seems like the only one who can get the offense back on track sometimes when they're in one of those lulls.
Definitely. And I think Yeah, and Reese hasn't been, even as he recovers, he still looks a little bit hesitant, and I think that that's a key, and that's why Kihei is so important.
As far as the lineup goes, by now I feel like Tony would have his rotation completely figured out. It looks like he's not there yet. Is that to do with Poppy being on the shelf? He wasn't even playing a lot when he was healthy either, which I haven't didn't totally get. Um, and just personally, what's Ben Vanderplas's perfect role? Because I think he looked like to be part of the struggle against Pitt.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
it seemed
hard.
like
Yeah, so with Ben Vanderplas, it's like it's tough because a lot of it, it's hard to criticize him individually for that Pittsburgh performance. Like it's easy to, rather. It's easy to, but it's hard to in the grand scheme of things because you have to count for a lot of coaching is putting your players in the best position to succeed. And I feel like he wasn't put in a good position to succeed against Pitt.
that's what I feel like.
Right. And so it's sort of like using him at the small ball five for like the 7 or 8 minute stretch that they did in that second half was a problem for UVA defensively. And he wasn't producing enough offensively. That was sort of my big question mark coming into the year was, are they going to be able to play Vanderplas and Gardner together effectively? Are they going to be able to survive defensively? And then how much of a positive, sort of like net positive will they be offensively? Like, can they even out some of that lack of mobility and whatnot defensively compared to having Kane Cheddar in the game? And so I think it's probably the best role for BVP is still small ball four, and then the playing small ball five, or not small ball four, but just playing the four, and then a small ball five against the right matchup. Caden Shedrick is struggling, and I think that is sort of it's tough because he's still good defensively, like relative to Vanderplas at their worst. Not that either of them have been playing, definitely at their worst, but he raises the floor. The problem is that he's just made a lot of sort of bad decisions on offense, on defense, just been undisciplined. And so then it's sort of like, okay, well, maybe we do throw Ben in there for a while. And so the decisions that Bennett has when the personnel isn't performing how you want it to perform, everything becomes more difficult. And it just like, so it's harder to criticize coaching. It's sort of like chicken and the egg thing. Is it the coaching that's putting these guys in the poor positions, or is it that the guys just aren't executing? And so that's just why, like, I think the simplest and easiest answer to this team, being better is just individuals being better. And that's sort of hard to say, and it's sort of hard to like count on because there's not a ton that you can sort of count on from Tony Bennett in that instance, just because it's in season improvement. But those things can happen. They have happened for UVA, so I don't think that like alarm bells should be going off. That being said, if they can get a win against Syracuse comfortably and then beat a good but sort of struggling UNC team at home, that would sort of set things right.
We've seen this happen before. We've seen losses come and then they go on a run. I mean, I think in the COVID year they won like the last 9 games or something like that,
Yeah.
and they had lost some to some rough teams earlier in the year. So anything's still on the table for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I mean, and that's the good news about the ACC not being very good is that it's possible to string those wins together. The problem is that when you lose on the road to Pitt, I mean, but we've seen it. Like Georgia Tech just beat Miami,
Yeah, ACC's
Crazy.
and NC State blows Duke out of the water.
Right, right. And so there's anything can happen on any given night, and you're used to saying that in terms of like there's a lot of good teams. Right now, I just think there's a lot of middling teams in the ACC, and it's hard to sort of say, okay, who's the top dog? Because UNC just lost to Pitt, Virginia lost to Pitt, Miami lost to Georgia Tech, Clemson, and is Pitt still undefeated in the ACC?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's a couple of teams like coming into the year, you would not have said that they were going to be undefeated in the ACC come January 6th. And so everything's open. Like there's no like definitive, like they didn't just pick up a loss to Navy, it's not a blemish on on sort of the resume. It's probably going to be a quad one loss to Pitt. So it's
Yeah.
not the end of the world by any means.
Yeah, it's not a JMU loss or a Navy loss. I mean, in Ken Palm, we only fell like a spot.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's not major.
Yeah.
I want to rewind for a second. You mentioned Caden not playing well? Is that like as you look at his numbers, they're kind of like he's shooting 70% from
Yeah.
the floor from two at least. Um, is it like a scheme thing or like uh what do you
Yeah.
see, analytical thing?
Yeah, so I mean, finishing, he's been incredible. So I should have prefaced it with that. Like, he has been a very, very good finisher this season, and that's something that he needed to get better at, and he clearly has. Like, his true shooting numbers are just, they're insane. Um, and that's been great. I think where you're seeing just the when I say struggling, the small technical things for him have always been sort of, can he fix those enough? And that's true with a lot of UVA big men, because it's hard in the Bennett system to recruit a Hunter Dickinson, an Armando Bacot. It's hard to get those guys just because they don't utilize the bigs in the way that those guys want to be utilized. And so you have these sort of guys that are slow developers. With Caden, I mean, you saw it really sort of obviously in the last, 5 minutes of that Pitt loss. It's the moving screen. It's not catching. And I know that it was late in the game. They were down by a couple of possessions already, but not catching that feed from Reese or Kihei. And then, having a breakdown defensively, hedging ball screens. It's just the small things like that where you say, man, like, this guy is so talented. He's so physically gifted and does so many things well on the basketball court, but he hasn't put it all together. And a big question mark for this team, along with, has Reese Beekman put it together, which I think arguably he has. It's just been injuries have made tough on him.
Yeah.
It was how will Kane Cheddar have put it together? Is he going to be a 32-minute per game center for this team, or is he going to be 25? And it's like, sort of, we want to play small ball. And so he hasn't been the guy yet. He hasn't been the guy where you're like, he's going to shut down Armando Bacot. We know that. He's going to shut down Hunter Dickinson. We know that. He hasn't been. And it's okay. It's not the end of the world, but that's sort of the player that he could have projected to be, or could, can project to be. And he hasn't been. And that's okay. And it's tough to sort of count on big leaps in sort of development, but it's clear that some of those technical small things that were problems for him in the past are still problems, and the consistency is not there. We're still seeing the flashes, but we're not seeing those flashes turn into, I don't know, fires or whatever the metaphor you want to use. That it's not consistent enough for him yet. And it's just, I don't want to, dunk on Caden. Like, he's still a very good ACC player, undoubtedly.
Sure.
But if you're looking for that sort of star potential, redshirt junior year, there's not a lot of time left. So we'll see how that goes over the next sort of, year and a half.
No, I love this. So just putting him up against Ben, right? So with Ben, I'd say Caden's a little bit better defensive player, obviously. With Ben on offense, so you have that, like, almost that boom potential where you could get one of those 20-point games against Miami,
Right.
So is that kind of what we're working with here? Like,
yeah, very much so. And the problem with Vanderplas is he can go 0-for-7. Just exactly, it's a boom or bust, like you said, and so it's hard because,
which is unfortunate because Armand is very similar to we have two of those guys on the same team.
Right. And I mean, fortunately, Armand is like 41% on the season on 5+ attempts per game, which doesn't feel like it's true. And some of that is just buoyed numbers against bad teams. But yeah, with Ben, it's just, it's tough because he's like a 32% shooter this year, or at least that's what it was a couple games ago. And he's 30 from three, and he's 32% on his career, despite shooting at a high volume. And so it's tough because in the Bennett offense, you like to have a guy who can pick and pop. You like being able to have that player to mess with defenses' heads, and to sort of make them guard differently depending on who the screener is or who the big is in that certain action. The problem is he's not a very good shooter when it's contested, and there's just a lot of bricks, and it's just kind of hard because some of them come late in the clock. Like, I think a lot of those sort of his 3 attempted threes against Pitt, which he missed all of, were sort of late. Like, okay, we got to get this shot up. It's the best one we have. So I don't want to completely blame him for that. But if he's not converting at 35+, but taking the number of threes that he is still, it's sort of hard.
Net negative, bro.
Yeah. Right. It's a net negative, especially if he's not going to be that sort of stalwart defensive guy. We saw early in the year, he can be physical down low. He just gets exploited when he's asked to hedge ball screens and be aggressive out on the perimeter, which Bennett likes to make his guys do. Bennett has been flexible, like that 2021 sort of Sam Hauser, Trey Murphy year. Bennett was willing to change ball screen coverages a little bit and let guys like Huff and Hauser play drop or switch if it for Hauser against ball screens. But it's something that he's hesitant to do because it sort of messes with the rest of the defense. And so it's just a question of, can Vanderplas survive defensively and then make enough shots? And it's just hard because if one thing isn't going right, then he is a net negative. He's still a very good player, very crafty, has a lot going for him on offense, not just as a shooter. He can make plays, can bully sort of a smaller defender in the post. But he has to be a situational guy, and that's where you need your starters like Kane Chedrick and Jaden Gardner to produce at a higher clip.
To kind of reach our full potential, what do you think rotation wise and maybe just thought wise, what do you think we need to do?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. It's hitting shots consistently, something that they haven't done, but it's an easy one. You have to be sounder defensively, just as individual defenders on the perimeter. You just have to be better. Have to be better in your rotations. This team lacks the size in their starting lineup. They have a guy who's 5'9", and I don't mean to rag on Kie for being short. It's just the reality. They go 5'9", 6'2", 6'4", 6'6", 6'7", 6'6" or 6'7", whatever Jaden's listed at, and then 6'11". They're undersized at positions 1 through 4, arguably. And so and that goes beyond individual matchups. It's in the rotations where that hurts you, just because you don't have the length to contest and to get out to shooters and to clog the passing lanes, which is something that Bennett teams typically rely on, is having 2 6'5" guards, and then a 4 who might be undersized like an Isaiah Wilkins, despite he's still 6'7", 6'8", but is crazy and can help all over the floor. They don't have that, and so you could say, okay, Ryan Dunn, great. He needs to establish a more consistent offensive game. He needs to be able to hit a catch and shoot 3-point shot and then get off the dribble at times. He's not a high volume guy, and it's hard to count on that, but you need more consistent production from McNeely and Dunn to raise this team ceiling. Absolutely. You need Chedrick to be more consistent shooting, as I said, and then just be better in the defensive rotations. And then I think that this team can absolutely make a run if you get a healthy Reese Beekman and sort of this team hitting on all cylinders. That's what it would look like. It's those young guys stepping up, Kane being consistent, better shooting, and then just sounder defense, which I think that we can count on come March, just because it's a Tony Bennett team. That being said, it didn't happen last year, so it's not a 100% bet.
Even with the loss to Pittsburgh, where Ken Palm only has us projected to lose one more game this year, and that's away at UNC in late February. So that's good. Switching it up for a second, from a fan base perspective, do you think we're a little bit spoiled by our success? I mean, I'm talking about mostly Twitter and that kind of thing. Are we spoiled by our success in maybe 2018 to 20?
Even just 2013 to 2019. Like that, like the Harris, last the Joe Harris year in 2014 through the national championship, absolutely. Because I was just thinking about the other day, like they were a 1 seed 4 times and a 2 seed once, and then the year that they weren't, they were a 4 seed and lost in the round of 32, or 5 seed and lost to Florida. Like that is incredible success. That is not replicable. That's not Duke. That's UNC's not doing that. Duke's not doing that. And obviously it's without Kay and Williams now, but that is like top tier, top 2 or 3 programs in the country. And so I don't know if spoiled is the right word. Like definitely some people are, but I do think that like we need to reframe expectations too. If you can get one of those years out of 4, you're doing a good job as a head coach in college basketball, because there's so much parity now. It's not just the ACC and the Big Ten anymore. It goes so far beyond that. So it's hard to sort of like weigh those 6 or so years compared to the last 4 and reasonably come out with some sort of actual like expectations.
Yeah, some of the disappointment, and I was disappointed with the Pittsburgh loss too, but some of the disappointment was just people thought it was going to be one of those years when we had those early wins. We, after the Michigan game, it's like, got this big road win. And then, Florida State and JMU weren't like hugely impressive wins, but we still started 8-0. And it's like we thought we'd probably mow through ACC conference play and be 1 or 2 losses, and just hasn't been that way.
And it's hard because like the Houston loss, okay, you have a banged up Reese Beekman. You don't look great against JMU or FSU. You have a banged up / out Reese Beekman. And it's just hard because it comes down to wins and losses. I don't think this team has looked horrible. Like the second half against Pitt was bad. That was bad. That
Yeah.
was the worst this team has played since last spring. Um, that being said, like we're still not that far away from only losing to Houston by 8, being 8-1 on the year, and still feeling like
Yeah.
a very clear top 8 team in the country. So they're not that far from there. They're really not, and they've got the talent. They have the individual players. Like I talk about all the improvements that need to be made, but you still have a likely top 35 pick if he goes in the draft in Reese Beekman. You still have a very veteran, cagey veteran in Kihei Clark who's putting up more numbers than he ever has in his career and is very good as a scorer this season. You have Armand Franklin, who is in the aggregate shooting 41%, on 5 attempts per game from 3. You have McNeely, who's coming on hot. You have Dunn, who can turn into an elite defender on the perimeter. You have Kane Shedder, who has crazy potential. Jane Gardner, who can be a 15-point per game scorer in the ACC. Ben Vanderplas, who's crafty as your sixth man. Francisco Cafaro, who can, body people up and give you 10 points off the bench. They've got the guys. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's the question of, can they put it all together? Can all the pieces? It's not even if the pieces can come together. It's more like, can the pieces get better together? And if that happens, then there's no reason this team can't win the ACC tournament, regular season, and go on a run.
Yeah, I think that the conspiracy theorist in me was thinking, maybe they just wanted to win Tony Bennett's,
Yeah, no,
record-breaking win at home.
yeah. I listen. Like I was talking, I'm at home in Pennsylvania right now, so I won't be at the game tomorrow against Syracuse. But there were a lot of journalists who was like, yeah, they're probably gonna get it on the road. It's kind of a bummer because not everybody can go, and they were trying to get last quotes from him on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to have them back home. It'd be cool if they could do that. It would stink if they lost to Boeheim and Cuse and didn't get it. And then I don't like the UNC matchup if UNC's playing well and hitting shots, but
Yeah.
hopefully it comes in one of the next two. If not, it's going to be a little bit of a curse.
Syracuse is unfortunately hot right now. They've won like 7 of their last 8.
Yeah.
But they're so reliant on Joe Girard that, you know, I think they shouldn't have a hard time shutting him down.
Yeah.
Every time I see him play him, I'm like, man, he's a little overrated, Joe Girard.
Definitely. And he's just you just say, all right, come on, Reese. Like just clamp him. Like just
Yeah.
put him in clamps and hold him to 48 points and just win this, please. Just make it easy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I felt similarly. Not I feel better going into Cuse than Pittsburgh because it was on the road against a better team, but it was just sort of like, gosh, they could just kill this team if they wanted to. And I think that I think they will against Syracuse. It's rare. I know we already saw it once this year, but it's rare for Bennett teams to lose twice in a row. And so I expect them to handle business against Cuse. UNC is a different animal. If UNC is on one, then they're tough to beat. That being said, if they're not on one, they're pretty easy to beat. So it's a weird team. But I think UVA has a chance to get 2 really solid wins at home and sort of make everybody feel a little bit better about the team overall.
All right. A couple more questions. Any ACC teams you've enjoyed watching this year or teams outside of the conference?
Yeah, I mean, trying to think, for how annoying that game was, Pittsburgh can be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The way that they play the game. And I was skeptical of Jeff Capel before this season, but I think what he's done there has been impressive. I'm trying to think. NC State can do some good things. Casey Morset, listen, like
he's leading the country or something,
right.
ACC in 3-point shooting.
And listen, like I think that's one of the transfers where it's probably smart that he left for both sides. I just don't think that he was gonna thrive in the Bennett system. He's just not that type of shooter, not that type of player. And they got Reese in sort of the system, and Kihei didn't ever leave, so like they were okay without Casey. And so I think it's cool to see him succeed. I don't think that he was ever like a bad dude who like didn't buy in or anything. I think he just needed a different place. And so I think, yeah, NC State and Pitt, probably two good teams. I haven't been able to watch everybody, unfortunately. Too much going on in my life, but those are two.
I hear you.
Fun.
It's hard. Like when you're following college basketball, I so thoroughly, or just one team so thoroughly. Like,
Yeah.
I'm for every Virginia game for sure, and I try and watch as much ACC basketball as I can. And then I like try and watch some Big East and Big Ten too. But
Yeah.
I literally have no time to watch NBA. How about you?
Yeah, NBA is very sparse watching for me. I mean, I'll check box scores when I know UVA
Yeah.
guys are playing. I used to really religiously watch UVA's NBA guys, but that was when I didn't have as much of a life
Yeah.
in high school and whatnot, and I was able to devote a lot of time to that. So yeah, NBA is limited, and just because there's so many games, I mean, it's the unfortunate reality of pro basketball. It's hard to sort of buy in. Although I mean, Ty Jerome's been impressing. That's been really awesome to see. Other guys,
Yeah.
undoubtedly, Brogdon, Hauser, Hunter, Murphy, but weirdly enough, I mean, Trey Murphy's in his second year, but you've come to expect that from those guys. Same thing with Hauser. But everybody's producing, and it's awesome to see that sort of like consistent success for guys to get in the league, because it's rare that UVA guys get into the league, get an opportunity, and don't perform, and that's what it's
It's
why.
huge for recruiting, man.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, and being able to say like the Malcolm Brogdon succeeding in the NBA is huge. If Ty Jerome does, like get out of town, because they
Yeah.
can turn on his defensive film and be like, you can be as bad of a defender as this guy and we can turn you into something better. And not to crap on Ty, he's a good technical defender, but he is athletically is not there. If they can turn that guy into an NBA quality defender, then they can turn just about anybody into one.
Yeah, Tom's got that like old man YMCA game.
Yep,
You know?
absolutely. He's going to be schooling guys for 50 more years.
Yeah. Do you think Kyle got to make it back to the NBA?
I don't think he needs to. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure he would like to. And I'm sure that like the Anthony Gill path is a pretty cool one. Being
Yeah.
for a while and then sort of like coming back as this like sort of like cagey vet who knows how to play the game and sort of win. But also like, why not just like live in Barcelona, wherever he lives? He's got a
Yeah.
wife, a kid. Like he doesn't need to come home. Like he's I mean for family, I'm sure, but I have a feeling he stays overseas in Europe for another 3-4 years before maybe
You can make a
trying.
lot of money. As long as you
Exactly.
have that MBA on the resume, you can make a
Yeah,
lot of money overseas, man. You could
definitely.
probably go to China and just make like drop 40 points a game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I mean, if I'm him, I'm loving life, and I'm like,
Yeah.
why would I go back beyond some G League team and have 5 people come to my games? Just
Dude,
enjoy more.
I never understood that, man. Like these G League teams, they have like the best player from all these big colleges and
Yeah,
they're playing in front of like 65 people.
yeah, it's weird, and part of it's just tough location, and it's like if
Sure.
it's a little bit more. I don't know. It's not like you can exactly like you know, do a team in a location where college players are from. But like I sometimes think of like the PLL is a weird example, the Premier Lacrosse League. Like they put like guys from one school, just on a roster. Like, a lot of Maryland guys are on the Whip Snakes and whatnot.
Cool.
Um, if they could do that in the G League or something and be like, all right, this is where all the, so and so dudes are gonna go. And it's not because it's so fluctuating and like it's a
Yeah.
farm system still. And so the G League's tough, and it's tough for guys that have been there. Like it's tough for a guy like Justin Anderson, for instance. Like people
Mhm.
know what he is as a player by now, and that's sort of the risk that like Ty was sort of starting to run. Just because like enough teams had seen him, they're like, okay, we kind of know what this guy is at his best. But this run is huge for him. Even I mean, he's still on a 2A, and just being able to get that next contract would be huge. For him and for his prospects. But yeah, I think Kyle, like, just stay in Europe, man. Love life. Like it's not why go play for the whatever Canton Charge for Cleveland. Like
Yeah.
that sucks. Like don't
No,
live in Ohio, live in Spain.
I like your style, man. What's going on in Streaking Lawn?
A lot of stuff. I mean, I'm taking my one week off a year, as I told you before I started going. I'm going to Disney World for the next week, so it will be a collective running of the site while I'm gone. But we got weekly podcasts coming out. We got 5 takeaways from every men's basketball game. We got a plus minus for every women's basketball game, just about. And we're ramping up to spring coverage. I'm getting pumped for lacrosse. We got our baseball team, coming in hot with coverage as well. And yeah, I mean, hopefully UVA basketball can keep things going. We got football recruiting news coming out still.
Yep.
Hopefully they'll have an offensive line coach within the next couple of weeks.
We just got a transfer from North Carolina today.
North Carolina, yeah, Cameron,
Kelly.
yeah, Kelly. There you go. So yeah, no, that the former 4-star. Hopefully, I wonder if they can transition him to being an outside corner because they kind of need something at outside corner right now. They've got some guys coming back at safety. So it's hard to tell exactly what they'll do with that defensive backfield, but it's good to add that talent. Absolutely. And so yeah, a lot of different things. Sort of January is a weird time of year because everybody's coming off of holidays and we're all feeling like we don't want to be writing. So there's probably been a couple fewer stories up on the website in the last week or two. But yeah, getting things raring to go. Once I'm back in town, we'll definitely be sort of a full go for the back half of college basketball and coming into the spring. So yeah, it's fun times.
I'm happy for you, man. Zach Carey streaking along. He's gonna be a great one. Thank you for jumping on this, bro.
Yeah, thank you so much. Anytime.